Hey friends, it's Rakita. I'm an artist, and over the past year, I've made over $25,000 from my art. Welcome to my channel. I'm so excited to talk to you a little bit about how I got there. And I'm going to be starting a series. This is the first of a series where I'm going to just be talking about what I did last week and how much money I made and what I did in order to make that money. So I'm hoping that this inspires some artists, especially those of you who might be trying to go full time. But if you're not trying to go full time, that's also fine. If you're just trying to make some extra money on the side, or maybe you have a part time job and you want to be able to supplement with your art, which is what I'm doing right now as I try to go full time. So, let me start from the beginning because a lot of you don't know who I am. I'm Rokita and I'm an abstract map maker. I make abstract maps out of watercolor and gold leaf, sometimes thread. Most of my pieces are mixed media, but mostly watercolor. So I started drawing when I was like 10 years old, and it was something that made me feel like I could escape from the world a little bit. My parents, my mom was fine, but my dad was very abusive. And so at night, I would just draw and draw and draw, especially when they were fighting and things were just really bad at home. Drawing was like an escape for me, just like reading was. So both reading and art were like my thing. And I was definitely the weird art kid in high school. So after I had practiced drawing for a while, I ended up going to a school where they had oil painting classes. And my teacher was amazing. And I ended up doing that class for all 4 years of high school. And I'm so grateful for that because he was so incredibly patient and encouraging. And he was the first person that told me I should consider going to art school. Now, I didn't go to art school because my dad, of course, was very discouraging and he didn't think I could ever make money from art. And so he planted the seed in my mind saying, you can't make money from art. And he was an artist to a certain degree. He was a producer and a musician, and he had barely made money from his artistic skills. And so I think he was just kind of projecting his own bullshit onto me. And so I decided, I want to do something with art, but let me do something where I will have a salary. So I ended up going to school for art history with the plan that I was going to get my master's degree in library and information science and become an art librarian, which is what I did. So after college was done, I moved to Pittsburgh. I did my library science degree and I ended up working for 5 years as a fine arts librarian. And I loved it. But when I first started that job, I was so stressed all the time. It was one of those jobs where I had to be teaching a lot. And when I first started, I was way more introverted than I am now. And so it was definitely like I felt like a fish out of water. And I would say like the first 6 months, I probably taught like 75 individual class sessions. And it was a lot. And so I remember during that time, I was so stressed that I came home one night and it was like a mental emotional break or something. I just like couldn't take it anymore. And I laid out dozens of pieces of paper all over the apartment. And I just started painting random stuff, random marks, random things. I didn't know really what I was doing, but I just needed to get it out of my system. And over the next 2 weeks, I started building kind of what I would call like a visual language for myself. And there were certain marks that I was making that I just felt very um, attuned to. Like they just resonated with me. And I wanted to make these marks again and again. If there are any abstract artists who are listening to this, you probably understand what I'm talking about, right? There's these marks that you just like love and you want to make them again and again. And so that's kind of what happened to me. And I started building this visual language. I didn't really know what I was making or how to describe it. All I knew was it felt good to make it, and it was very therapeutic for me. So, fast forward to COVID, and I ended up leaving the library because I had my daughter and it got complicated with her, and there was no daycare, and I ended up having to leave my job so that I could stay home with her. She was about a year old at that time. And I got another like part-time job. It barely paid anything. I think I was making $1,200 a month. So it was nothing. It was a marketing job, and I did a really good job in that job, and I learned a lot about marketing. I was helping with this business with basically running a Kickstarter campaign for this other artist. And I did all the marketing. I did all the email marketing. I wrote the Kickstarter page. I did the Facebook ads, literally everything. And I learned it like from scratch. And it was a huge learning curve, but it was extremely valuable because as I was going through it, I was thinking, I could probably use all of this information I'm using or learning, for my art, so that I can grow my art business. And yes, it has been incredibly, incredibly helpful. So marketing, right? Number one thing that I would say as an artist, you really need to learn if you want to turn it into a thriving business. Okay. Either that or hire somebody because you're going to have to do marketing. So I did that for a little while. That job lasted like a year. I got another job that was really good. And then I ended up going through a divorce, which sucked. And my daughter eventually, this was later, I had been through multiple jobs. And right in the middle of the divorce, I ended up buying my house. We had agreed I was going to buy the house so that our daughter could have a place to call home. And he was going to go into an apartment. And we were trying to work everything out as best as we could. I bought the house, and a month later, I was laid off. And during that time period, I was thinking, like, I kind of knew the business that I was working for was going to go under soon. Like, I knew things were not great. And I was like, I'm going to try and go full time with my art. And so I had applied to an art fair. It was the Superfine art fair. And I think this was back in 2024. And I had applied for Superfine, and it was 2023 or 2024. I'm trying to remember. Time got weird after COVID. Have any of you noticed that? Like, it just feels like time doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, so I thought that going to this art fair was going to solve all my problems. And spoiler alert, it did not. But it was a good learning experience. During that art fair, which I applied for, I got into, I paid for it with my credit card. I was like, hopefully I'll make the money back, right? This is an investment in myself. I get laid off from my job after buying the house too. It was like a lot at once. And I was like, this better work. So I take my art to this art fair, and I think I made, well, let me preface by saying the booth was $3,700, okay? It was a professional art fair, right? A gallery wasn't taking my art to the fair for me, and so I had to pay for the booth myself if I wanted to be there. So the booth was expensive. I had to pay for my own hotel room and my own food and all that stuff, and obviously gas to get there. So it was expensive, and it was a risk that I was taking on myself and on my art. And so I did the art fair. I only made $1,500, and it was both embarrassing and hard, but I also learned a very valuable lesson because while I had my art displayed at that fair, I had people who were coming up to me and saying, "What's your art about? Tell me more about this one." And for me, I was just making from a place of just pure intuition and just like doing it to relax and just like enjoy myself. I wasn't really thinking about themes or anything specific, right? And so I just felt like I didn't know how to talk about my art. And so that's the second thing, okay? The first thing is marketing. The second thing is know what your art is about, okay? So after this art fair, I ended up getting another part-time job because I was like, okay, obviously, like, I need some more time to figure this out. So I got another part-time job, and during that time, it was about 6 months, okay? I was just kind of doing a deep dive. Actually, maybe it was a little bit more than that. Maybe it was closer to like 11 months, 12 months. I was doing a deep dive on like, what is my art about? What do I want to talk about? What do I care about? What do I want people to connect with when it comes to my art? And that was incredibly important for me. So that's the next thing, right? Kind of formulate what your artist statement is, what you care about, all those things, and do research. So the research that I was doing, I was reading books. I was trying to figure out, okay, what the hell do I care about? I finally landed on like, hey, like, this is like a theme throughout my whole life. Like I've always really cared about nature and the environment, and climate change is something that like weighs heavy on me. And so I want to be able to speak to those things that I care about, right? And so the other thing was I realized that what I was making, right? I eventually realized I was making abstract maps because they have this very map-like quality to them. I was making these isolines, and like it just made sense. Like, oh, okay, these are maps. And like that really was what made the most sense to me in terms of being able to describe what I was making. And so as I was doing all this research, I was writing all of it down, and I was writing a lot of it on Patreon. And there were a few people who had subscribed, not a ton. So I kind of felt like I was speaking to the void. However, I noticed that people really started connecting with my art because I was then making my work from a place of just like pure curiosity for a specific theme or topic. And yeah, people just ended up just really connecting with it. And stuff started selling a little bit more at that point. So then some bad stuff happened with my job, and I didn't make money for 2 months. And this was last summer. And I was like, if I don't make money from my art, I will not have food to eat. Like, okay, yeah, I could go to like a food bank or something, but like I was legitimately worried about like, will we have enough food to eat? Will I have enough money to put gas in the car and to make sure my daughter is taken care of? I couldn't even afford to get new clothes for her for school. I had to ask for help from family. And it was just like a really rough period of time where I was not sure how I was going to pay for anything. Bills were piling up. I didn't pay the mortgage for a couple months. Like it was rough. And so I told myself, I've been waiting long enough. I need, for my own sanity, and so that I can be proud of myself, and so that I don't have to ever work for anybody else again, unless it's like a commission, right? I want to go full time with my art. That's what I want to do. And so at the end of last summer, I started really taking my art business seriously. And there was a platform that I had started playing around with the year before called Threads. A lot of you probably know about it. If you don't, you should be on there, especially if you're trying to market your art. Tons of creatives on there. And I just started posting more frequently. And when I say more frequently, I am talking about 15 to 20 times a day. And that includes commenting on people's posts, commenting my art on those like big art threads. And then one thing I also noticed was there were certain posts that other people were making that were going viral. And I was like, how can I use this to my advantage? So what I did was I would take that kind of template and say, okay, this went viral for some reason. Let me look at that and make something similar, but in my voice, having to do with my art. And my post started going way viral. So that was awesome. And over the past year or so, I've gained over 20,000 followers. At this point, I have 27,000 followers. That might change by tomorrow because I might post something and get a bunch of people. The other thing I started noticing was that anytime I posted something about my values, my account would just blow up and people would buy art. And so if you've made it this far and you are MAGA, you can just leave, okay? But I started being very specific and talking loudly about what I care about. Very anti-fascist, anti-MAGA. I hate Trump. And so I was being very, very outspoken about all of that on Threads. And anytime that I was very outspoken about what I cared about, and it wasn't just that, it was, being outspoken about what was happening with the environment and with Indigenous communities. I'm part Taino, and so, I do care deeply about that and my family history. I have literally my great grandparents were both Taino descendants, and they lived in the hills of Puerto Rico. And so, it's something that I do care about. And so I'm talking about these themes, I'm talking about my values and what I care about, and people are really connecting with that. And all of a sudden, it gives them a touch point to want to know more about me and know about what I'm working on and to invest in me. And so that has been a game changer. And so that's the other thing I would say in terms of the marketing. Be loud and be proud about what you care about, and people will flock to that for sure. So that was the other thing I did. And for some reason, Threads, like I love the way the algorithm works. If you put like even a keyword in your post, like it will push it out to people who tend to engage with posts with those keywords. Okay. So for example, I talked the other day about being a Star Trek fan. You guys, I gained 1,000 followers from just literally talking about how I liked Star Trek. So yeah, Threads is a wild place, and sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to like why something goes viral, and it's actually pretty hilarious how that happens on there. But it's definitely a place where, something like that can happen, and all of a sudden you have all these people in your corner, okay? That never happened with me or for me on Instagram for some weird reason. I've never really been able to figure out how to get my Instagram to grow, although Threads has been helping. So whenever something goes viral on there, I get a bunch of followers on Instagram too. So that has been pretty cool as well. So yeah, Threads, amazing place. Some people have, better success on other platforms. I know someone who makes all their money from Facebook. Some other folks who just use, they just use Instagram or they use YouTube, right? Whatever it might be, I would say like look for the platform that resonates the most with you and feels the most intuitive. For me, it's Threads. If you are introverted and you like a place where you can just kind of like let your inner thoughts out without having to like say anything out loud, you need to get on Threads. It's the place for you probably. Okay, so that has been going so well. And when I started getting really consistent with it, and it's not every day, I don't really post on Saturdays. Thursday nights and Friday nights, I take a break. Those are the nights I don't have my daughter, and I'm able to spend those evenings with my fiance and take an actual break from life. The rest of the time, I am painting or posting. That's really what I'm doing in addition to my part-time job. So I am working part-time still because I need to have a buffer. And if 1 month isn't that good in terms of my art business, I want to be able to have some fallback money. So that's very important for me as I grow. I would not recommend going cold turkey and just kind of quitting your job. That is not something I would recommend unless you have kind of built things up for a little while. So the part-time job thing, definitely important. Trying to think if there was anything else. Okay, so I started posting really consistently, and I think the first month I made like a little over $1,500 from my art. I think that was in September. October, I made probably like 2,500. And since then, the income has been steadily increasing. And in April, I made over $5,600. Okay. It was my best month so far. And I did have like 1 month that was really good, like a year and a half ago, but that was because someone bought a painting that was almost $5,000, which has never happened ever. It happened at that time and it's never happened since then. The most I've sold a painting for since then was like around the $2,300 mark. So yeah, last month was amazing. The other thing I've been doing as I've been consistently growing is making sure I'm updating my website all the time. I use Shopify, which I absolutely love and would recommend. I have my email list, which I use Flowdesk for just because I really like the different templates and it's very easy to use for me. It's a little bit more of like it has an artsy feel to it. So I use Flowdesk for that. And the other thing I've been doing is just like applying to everything. So open calls for art, different awards. I ended up getting an award through the local library system, and it's also a licensing deal. So they're paying me to use my art throughout the library's promotional materials for Hispanic and Latin American Heritage Month, and on for the next 5 years, which is really exciting. And I also applied to be featured in a documentary, which is coming out really soon. So I'll let you guys know about that once it's out. Yeah, so I've just been applying to a lot of things. I would say like I probably apply to something like once a week or once every couple of weeks. And I'm just looking for open calls like on Instagram. So that's what I've been doing. And some of the opportunities have been referrals from other people who are saying, hey, you should apply to this. Usually I'll check it out. If it's not my thing, I just say thank you and move on. But it's worth, just looking at what people send me sometimes. So that's been very helpful. And the other thing I did as I was growing my Threads account, because that's been huge for me, is I started doing art auctions. And I wasn't using eBay. I've seen artists who use eBay, especially for like ACOs. But for me, I just started doing it on like a post on Threads, because you can see like when people posted. And so there's kind of like that timestamp on there. So I would just do like a post that had the instructions in the first slide and then images of what I was auctioning off in the rest of the slides. Some of them bombed pretty badly, but I would say like overall, I was making probably around or under $500 a month from auctions on Threads. And I've stopped doing them a little bit. I want to get back to it, but things have just been so busy. There've been so many opportunities in the past month that I've had to kind of take a break from it. But when I first started, I had this stockpile of art prints and originals that were originally for bringing to art fairs. And I was like, well, I can't really afford to go to an art fair right now. And I don't know when the next one's going to be. So let me just auction these things off. And so I started doing about 2 auctions a week. And I think that was really helpful in terms of getting people just introduced to my art. And there were so many individuals who won an auction and ended up becoming repeat collectors. People who buy from me once every couple weeks to once a month to once every couple months. These people are my ride or dies. They are amazing. I love every single one of them. They have a very special place in my heart because they're helping me get to where I need to go. And I just really, really appreciate that. And so the auctions have been really helpful. And, it also, there's actually quite a few people who have collected through my auctions who have never collected art before. It's their very first time. And I think it's a really great way to introduce people to art. And all of a sudden, you have someone who not only is getting interested in art, but they want to collect more from you, right? So that's been a game changer as well. So the consistency, the art auctions, and then speaking very loudly about my values and making sure I'm on top of creating as well. So that's the last thing I'll talk about really quick is just make art. Okay, make a lot of art. I have made terrible art. I've made amazing art, but I just keep making art, and that has been really helpful. And I kind of have somewhat of a schedule for myself. So yeah, Thursday nights and Friday nights and most of Saturday, I'm not creating anything. Sometimes Saturday night I will, because I'm finally I'm like, okay, let me get settled. And it's just because that's the night my daughter comes home. I switch with my ex-husband, and he brings her back over. And so I do movie night with her. And then after she goes to bed, I start making for the week. And any spare moment I have, I'm making art. So that means, I might wake up. My daughter might not be awake yet. I will go downstairs, and for 10 minutes, I'm working on something. And then I'm going to take the trash out and get breakfast started. She's getting breakfast, and for another 10 minutes, I'm working on something. And I'm posting something. And then I'm getting us out the door. And then after that, I'm sitting in the car about to go to my part-time job, and I'm posting stuff. Okay. Or I come back to the house for like a little bit of time, and I'm packaging up a painting or taking photographs or whatever. And then in the evening, after my daughter gets home from school, in between all of our things that we have to do, and she's almost 7 now, so she's a little bit more self-sufficient, I'm making art and or posting. So that's what I do. Okay, so that's the last thing. Have a very consistent making schedule for yourself. Very, very important. And be posting as much as you can and just getting that art out there. For me, it's been a lot easier to make more art because I know what my art's about. And I have these specific things that I've been researching, and like I just get like obsessed with stuff right now. I'm currently obsessed with lichen, and I'm just making lots of art about lichen and about symbiosis in nature and this concept around caring for each other in community. And so that has been a game changer as well. Just knowing what my art is about has helped me so much with making more of it. Okay. So it's like endless, almost endless inspiration and very, very helpful. So, okay. This weekend, I'm working on a mural and I'm going to be taking some time lapses. And I have a documentary that's coming out that I'm going to be featured in on Friday. It's coming out, the screening is happening on Friday evening. And I'm bringing a couple paintings that are going to be for sale. And that's happening downtown in Pittsburgh at one of the public theaters. Very exciting. And I have a magazine article that's coming out about me on Friday as well with Art Scene Magazine. And that was something that I applied for a couple of months ago and I completely forgot about it. And they were like, you got accepted. So like I said, right, just applying to stuff, even if I'm not sure I'm going to get accepted, why not? Let me just try it. So I'll see you guys next week. Please hit the subscribe button if you like this content, and let's see where this thing goes. See you guys later.